Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to part 5 of my Dominaria United set review for Limited and Constructed. Today we're going to be talking about all the green cards for Dominaria United. But before I get started, I just wanted to make a note of something in regards to the Enlist ability. In some of my previous videos for the set, I think it was white and maybe red, I misspoke as if you could enlist multiple creatures onto a creature with Enlist. And after checking out the Dominaria United release notes from Wizards, it turns out you can only enlist one creature per Enlist ability. That pretty much solidifies the ratings I gave for the Enlist creatures. Doesn't really change anything. It just means that Enlist is a little bit more limited ability than I thought, and that's my mistake for not catching that. But after reading the full release notes for Enlist, it turns out that you can only use one creature that is not attacking and without summoning sickness to be enlisted onto a creature with Enlist. So just something to note. I wasn't sure entirely, so that's why I looked it up. So let's go ahead and jump into the green cards. And speaking of Enlist, our first common up is a card with Enlist, Barkweave Crusher. For 3 and a green, it's a creature, elemental warrior, 2/5 power and toughness. It has Enlist. And then I'll just read the Enlist rules text again, just as a quick reminder. Enlist. As this creature attacks, you may tap a non-attacking creature you control without summoning sickness. When you do, add its power to this creature's until end of turn. So, no other abilities, but other than the Enlist ability, but appears to be the only creature I've seen so far with a toughness of 5 with Enlist. So, that actually might be pretty good. Because a lot of the other Enlist creatures I've seen have pretty weak toughness for what they have, so this might be pretty decent. But other than that, it's somewhat limited. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and give it a low rating for limited, and I'm going to do the same for constructed. Aside from the Enlist ability, it's just a 2/5 creature for 4 mana value, so somewhat limited in that respect. So I think low rating across the board for limited constructed for this card. Next up is Bite Down. For 1 and a green, it's an instant. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. This is basically a functional reprint of Master's Rebuke from Kamigawa Neon Dynasty. It's a welcome addition though, because it's a pretty useful card, and being able to have several copies of these is pretty nice. I like it. I think it's got worthy of a mid rating for limited, and same thing for constructed. The fact that it's a bite spell that lets you deal damage to planeswalkers as well as creatures is nice, and its instant speed. I think the only thing that keeps me from giving it a high rating is the fact that it's a spell that requires you have a creature on the board under your control to use. But other than that, it's pretty effective. And for limited, I would definitely be drafting this card if I'm playing green. And for constructed, if I'm playing green or any kind of mid to heavy green card, I'd have a 4 of these in the deck, more than likely. If not in the main deck, it would be in the sideboard. It's a solid card. Next up is Bog Badger. For 2 and a green, it's a creature, Badger, 3/3 power and toughness. Has a kicker cost of 1 black. When Bog Badger enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, creatures you control gain menace until end of turn. Yeah, that's pretty decent. I mean, just by itself, it's just a 3/3 for 3. That's a decent rate, for today's common creatures. It's something I would put in a deck for a limited deck. And with a mid to late game, well-timed casting of this spell with the kicker cost, I could open up the open up the doors for you to deliver an alpha strike on your opponent. So I like this card. I think it's pretty decent as far as what it can do for its upside, and even just without the kicker cost, I think it's serviceable. So I give it a mid rating for limited. For constructed, it's a little basic in the light of all the cards that are available to choose from in constructed. Even in standard, I could see it maybe being used in a commander deck, but beyond that, I think it's more designed to be optimized in limited. Next card is another reprint for this set. Broken Wings for 2 and a green. It's an instant. Destroy target artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. I think this was reprinted in Streets of New Capenna, and then Call Time, and then I believe it originally appeared in Zendikar Rising. So it's got several printings for this card. Pretty useful. I would say it's a sideboard card though, for sure. Both for limited and constructed, because of its narrow usage though, and it's something you probably want to just bring in from the sideboard. Give it a low rating for both limited and constructed. It's something, if I was drafting it, I would probably draft at least one copy and throw it in the sideboard, and then bring it in if I'm facing something that's causing me issues. And then for constructed, it's also definitely a card I'd have in the sideboard. Not something I'd start on a regular basis. Next common is Colossal Growth for 1 and a green. It's an instant with a kicker cost of red. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. If the spell was kicked, instead that creature gets +4/+4 and gains trample and haste until end of turn. That's a pretty good card, pretty good modular combat trick, if you will. The fact that it gives, just for 1 more red, it'll give creature haste, trample, and an additional point of damage and toughness. I think that's pretty good. However, it is combat tricks, so sometimes you might get 2 for 1 if they have an answer for it in response to you casting it. So I think I'm just gonna go ahead and it's tough to say, but I'm gonna give it a generous rating for limited. Give it a mid rating. It's something I would draft when I'm playing limited, draft or sealed. And I'm playing green. I would have it in the deck. So it's definitely a card I would start. For constructed, I think I would give it a low rating, just because constructed is so tight. So for choosing cards, this would have to probably have a specialized reason to have it in the main deck. But so I think I'd give it a low rating for now. Going on to the next common, Deathbloom Gardener for 2 and a green. It's a creature, elf druid with death touch. Add 1 mana of any color. For limited, this could be pretty decent. I found when you've got a creature with death touch, they function better as a defender. Your opponents don't want to attack into a bunch of death touching creatures, so it's better using it on the defense. But if you do have to get through in an attack, having death touch is always good. Just as long as your opponents don't have anything with first strike. But your opponents aren't going to want to block a creature with death touch. So, but the fact that it has death touch and you can tap it to add 1 mana of any color, that's pretty good. I like the way the design of it. It kind of plays into just using death touch as a defensive tactic, and then being able to tap it to add mana of any color. I'm going to give it a mid rating for limited. I think it's pretty solid. For constructed, I'll give it a low rating, but if you're playing this in Commander or Brawl or something like that, I think this could function pretty well for you. Also, it's an elf, so it would fit into an elf tribal deck really nicely. In that case, it might be worthy of more of a mid-level rating, but I think overall for constructed, I'd go low with that. Next common is Elfheim Worm for 4 and a green. It's a creature worm with a 5/4 power and toughness. Vigilance, trample. Can't remember the name of the card, but it's from Oath of the Gatewatch from years ago. This is pretty much a functional reprint of that same card. Same abilities. It had vigilance and trample. I'd be happy to draft this or put it in a sealed deck as a common. 5/4 trample, vigilance. That's a pretty good rate for 5. I'm gonna give it a mid rating for limited. I really like it. For constructed, I think it's maybe a little expensive for what it does in constructed, just due to the fact of how hyper efficient a lot of the constructed creatures are. So probably low is the highest I'd go for it in a constructed deck. Next up is Floriferous Vine Wall for 1 and a green. It's a creature, plant wall with power and toughness 0/2. Has defender. When Floriferous Vine Wall enters the battlefield, look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a land card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So yeah, they do have a defender deck type that they kind of want you to build in this set. But even if you're not playing a bunch of defenders in your deck, this is pretty good just for mana smoothing, for getting that that next basic land type you need for domain, or just to help you splash a third color in your deck. So this is pretty good for the rate it is. The fact that it lets you get a land, it doesn't have to be basic, and you can put it into your hand. It can let you get any of the dual lands or mana fixing lands or something like that, lands with special abilities. So it's pretty good. I like this for mid, for limited, because of how useful it is, and it doesn't discriminate between basic land and just a land. I'm also going to give it a mid rating in constructed. I can see this definitely having some use in Commander for sure, especially with how varied Commander can be. And of course, it goes into any kind of defender deck that has some tricks up its sleeve. It just naturally fits in to help you smooth out your mana. So I'll give it mid across the board for both of those. Next card is a reprint, Gaia's Might for 1 green. Has domain. Target creature gets +1/+1 until end of turn for each basic land type among lands you control. I believe this is a reprint from way back in the day. Gosh, it might actually be from the Invasion block. Can't remember which set exactly, but old school reprint, but it's still good today. Obviously, it benefits from using the domain mechanic. At the very least, it just gives a creature +1/+1. If you have all 5 basic land types, it gives creature +5/+5, and then the range in between there, So pretty decent. I like it. Most, like in limited, you're probably gonna be playing between 2 and 3 colors, although it seems like 5 colors is a possibility. So at the very least, it'd be a +2/+2, maybe a +3/+3 for 1, so it ends up becoming a giant growth. And anything beyond that is pretty good. So I think I'm gonna give it a mid rating for limited. Just due to the fact that it looks like they want you to be able to play multicolor type decks in limited for Dominaria United. I think it benefits from that. So I think it just barely reaches the mid level for a card for limited. For constructed, I'm going to go a low rating, unless you have a specifically designed domain deck, or you're playing some kind of eternal format where you've got like a bunch of shock lands or dual lands or something like that, where you have every basic land type. Then this might fit in better and be a better card. But for now, I think I'll just go low for constructed, but pretty decent for limited. Next common is Hexbane Tortoise for 2 and a green, 3/2 power and toughness, creature turtle. It has Ward 2 and Enlist. It's interesting. I haven't seen that combo yet. The fact that it has Ward 2, that's always good. And it has Enlist. So that kind of makes it tougher to deal with, to blow off the board. If you're attacking with it, you've enlisted a creature, your opponent's going to have to pay 2 extra to use a removal spell on it. However, it doesn't pump its toughness at all. And once again, it's a creature with a low toughness with the enlist ability. So I like it. It's something I would play in my limited deck. Although there might be some cards I play ahead of it. It is a little fragile, but I think I'm going to give it a low rating for limited, but it's at the high end of the low rating. So it's right there on that line between low and mid. For constructed, I just give it a flat out low. Too fragile to really be a factor in any kind of constructed deck. Next up is Lanamore Stalker. For 1 green, it's a creature elf warrior, 1/1 power and toughness. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, Lanamore Stalker gets +1/+0 until end of turn. Pretty good early game threat. Yeah, you'll be able to, if you've got a nice curve in your limited decks, you'll be able to get a lot of value out of this before people start wanting to get rid of it. You could probably get 1 or 2 decent attacks out of this before it dies, I'm thinking. And it is an early 1-drop too. Although it does have that fragile 1 toughness, so I think I'm going to give it a low rating at best for Lanamore Stalker. But once again, it's right on that line between low and mid. But you know, if you play it right, you might be able to get some pretty good value out of it before your opponent's able to kill it. Lanamore Stalker for constructed, I'll still give it a low rating. It is an elf warrior, so it might fit pretty nicely into those kind of tribal decks or in commander. But beyond that, it's pretty limited in what it can do. So we'll go low in constructed as well. Next common is Magnagoth Sentry for 3 and a green. Creature Treefolk, 4/4 power and toughness with reach. I like this card. I think for its cost and power and toughness, that's a pretty good rate. Plus it has reach, so if your opponent's got a bunch of flyers, this can at least engage in combat with them. You don't have to worry about your opponents flying over you unimpeded. So I like it. It's efficient for what you're paying for it. So I'm going to give it a mid rating for limited. I'd be happy to draft this if I was playing green. For constructed, once again, it falls victim to just the efficiency of creatures that you can select from in constructed. Even in standard or commander, it's going to have a lot of competition, but it does have its uses. So you could probably work it in. If you're working with a Treefolk deck in commander, this might be a good candidate to put in your deck. Moving on to the next common, Scout the Wilderness for 2 and a green. It's a sorcery. Has a kicker cost of 1 and white. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, tapped, then shuffle. If this spell was kicked, create 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. Yeah, this is decent. It's got mana smoothing, mana ramping, because you can put it onto the battlefield tapped. It is a basic land that is the only thing you can get. Plus it gives you, if you kicked it, it gives you 2 1/1 white soldier creature tokens. I like it. It's something I would play in limited. I'll go mid-range on that for limited. I think that's pretty solid. It could be sneaky good. I'm going to give it a mid rating for constructed as well. I think people will be able to find some decent use for this card in the standard, in Pioneer, Explorer, Commander, all of them. I think the only areas where you might not see it played at all is Legacy or Modern, just due to how hyper efficient and how low the mana curves are in those decks. So, but the rest of them, I think it could do pretty well. Next common is Snare Spinner for 1 and a green. It's a creature spider, 1/3 power and toughness. Has reach. Whenever Snare Spinner blocks a creature with flying, Snare Spinner gets +2/+0 until end of turn. I think this is a reprint from many previous sets or functional reprint. We've seen cards like this before. Good for blocking flyers with mid to low toughness. It could be, it's useful. I think I'm going to give it a low rating. However, it's right on that line again between low and mid. Just due to the fact that it's not able to attack for much, but it can smash for a lot if it's blocking a flyer. Same thing for constructed. I'm sure it's in that low range as its previous versions of itself or functional reprints. So give it a low rating for constructed. Next common is Sunbathing Root Walla for 1 and a green. It's a creature lizard, 2/2 power and toughness. Has domain, 3 and a green for the activation cost. Until end of turn, Sunbathing Root Walla gets +1/+1 for each basic land type among lands you control. Activate only once each turn. Not bad. If you're playing a 2-color deck, at the very least, it gets +2/+2. Playing all 5 basic land types, it's going to get +5/+5. That can be pretty good if it gets past any kind of blocking and your opponents don't block it. You can just pump and take 5 more. So, fairly decent. I like it because it's a 2-drop too. Once you get into the 2-drop range and your opponents don't have answers, you can rip off a lot of damage. So, I'm going to give it a mid rating for limited. I think its true strength will be in that type of format. For constructed, I'll give it a low rating, just due to the fact that it's got a lot of competition. But you never know. 2/2 for 2, and then an activated ability to make it stronger. That's pretty decent. But we'll go low for constructed, though. See, I think this might be the last common. Vine Shaper Prodigy for 1 and a green. Creature, Elf Druid, 2/2 power and toughness. Has a kicker cost of 1 and a blue. When Vine Shaper Prodigy enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, look at the top 3 cards of your library. Put one of them into your hand and the rest on the bottom of your library in any order. So basically, it's got the spell Anticipate attached to it, which functionally does the same thing. Lets you look at the top 3 cards, your library, choose a card, and put the rest on the bottom in any order. Yeah, this is a decent card. It's definitely has some value to it. 2/2 for 2, and then mid to late game, if you've got mana to spare and you want to get an extra card, I think that's pretty decent. And it fits nicely into the flavor of the Simic color pair. Just the flavor that you often see with this color pair. So I'll give it a mid rating for limited. I like it. I like that. For constructed, I think I'm going to give it a mid rating as well, but it's on the low end of the mid level rating. It could be useful. It could find its way into certain decks. It's an elf card too, so you could do really well with it in tribal decks. I think it fits in nicely in Commander. That's one of the reasons why I give it a mid rating. Just a really decent card for value. I think it shines more in limited, but I think for the savvy deck builder, this could be a good value card for constructed as well. So we'll go mid across the board for that. Okay, we actually have one more common. Yavimaya Sojourner for 7 and a green. Creature Treefolk, 4/6 power and toughness. Has domain. The spell costs 1 less to cast for each basic land type among lands you control. So really, if you want to get the max value for this, you're going to want to be playing all 5 basic land types to reduce its mana value cost down to 2 and a green. But if you're playing 2 or 3 colors, you're going to be paying anywhere from 5 to 6 to cast this spell. So outside of that, it could be kind of clunky and difficult for you to play. I'm going to give it a low rating for limited. Same thing for constructed. It might be something that's situational where you need something with a good toughness that you can use. That's when I think in that situation, it could be better than the low rating I'm giving it. But other than that, just at first glance, I'll probably give it a low rating, but I could be wrong. But that's just kind of my initial impression on it. But I love the artwork though for it. Really cool. So moving on to the uncommons. Our first uncommon is Elvish Hydromancer for 2 and a green. It's a creature, elf wizard, 3/2 power and toughness. Has a kicker cost of 3 and a blue. When Elvish Hydromancer enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, create a token that's a copy of target creature you control. Interesting. Yeah, that's an interesting card. I think that's pretty good. I'm going to give it a mid rating for limited. The reason why is in limited, you can cast it by itself as a 3/2, but if you're able to get into the mid to late game, you're able to pay the kicker cost, and you've got really nice, efficient, or beefy creature, you throw this out on the battlefield and you pay the kicker cost, making that token. That could be the difference, the fact that you're breathing down your opponent's neck with two of your best creature. That could be pretty good. And it could be a game ender right away. So I like it. I like it. Sneaky good for limited. For constructed, I think it's a little too slow for something you might see in constructed. Maybe in a commander deck, but beyond that, it's just a little expensive for what you generally see in constructed decks. But you never know. It's an elf wizard. It could fit into a commander deck, tribal deck pretty nicely. Next uncommon is Linebreaker Baloth for 3 and 2 green. It's a creature beast, 4/5 power and toughness. It has Enlist. Linebreaker Baloth can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. That's actually pretty cool. I like the use of Enlist here. The fact that it's a big beefy creature with a 5 toughness. And if you enlist onto it, let's say give it a +2/+0 or +3/+0, then it becomes a real threat that can't be blocked by anything with power 2 or less. That could be a dilemma for your opponents if they're not able to field a force with high power creatures. So I'm going to give it a mid rating. I like it. I like it for limited, mid rating. For constructed, we'll go low on it. I think it shines more in limited, but yeah, you never know in constructed. It's a beast. Nowadays, you see all sorts of stuff in commander decks, so I wouldn't surprise seeing it there. But I think you can get the best value out of it when you're playing it in limited for draft and sealed. Next uncommon is Mossbeard Ancient for 5 and 2 green. It's a creature tree folk, 7/7 power and toughness. It has trample. When Mossbeard Ancient enters the battlefield, you gain 5 life. So historically, these cards are in limited are sneaky good, just due to the fact that they're tramply, give you a 7/7 creature, and they gain you 5 life. This can actually swing the game for you and let you stabilize if you're behind in a limited game. If you're tied with your opponent, this is just going to improve your position on the board. And if you're ahead, it's just really going to put the pressure on your opponent, letting them know that their days are numbered for this game. So I like it. I think it's sneaky good. I'm actually going to give it a high rating for limited. I think it's solid. It's definitely something, if I saw passed to me in a draft, I would draft it if I was playing green. I'm going to give it a mid rating in constructed. I think it can be a force in commander. And you never know. With some of the standard decks I've seen recently, this could actually fit in with it. I mean, it's not much different than a Titan of Industry, other than, well, basically it's the same as a Titan of Industry, minus the shield counter ability and the destroy artifact enchantment ability or create a rhino token ability. But still, you never know. It could find its way into the deck. At an uncommon, it's pretty decent. So I'll give it a mid rating for constructed. Next up is Neshoba Brawler for 1 and a green. It's a creature, cat warrior. It has star 3 for power and toughness, trample, domain. Neshoba Brawler's power is equal to number of basic land types among lands you control. Not bad, pretty good. You know, if you're playing a 2-color deck, this is at least a 2/3 for 2 mana value with trample. That's pretty good. And then if you have you know, all 5 basic land, you're for 2 mana, you're getting a 5/3 trampler. Yeah, that's pretty good. I like it. I'm going to be generous and give it a high rating. At the risk of criticism for that rating, I think it's pretty decent. It's an early threat for your opponents. You play 2 tap lands that each have different basic land types. You're going to be attacking for 4, at least, maybe 5 on turn 3. So something to think about in that respect. Give it a mid rating for constructed. I think you might be able to get max value for it pretty good in a constructed deck as well. So you never know. We'll see how domain plays out in the standard format coming up. But pretty cool card. Pretty efficient. So we have another uncommon, Slimefoot Survey for 4 and a green. It's a sorcery. It has domain. Search your library for up to 2 land cards that each have a basic land type. Put them onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Look at the top X cards of your library where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. Put up to 1 of them on top of your library and the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So it's a ramp spell with a card draw manipulation ability, and you're able to dig or look 5 deep if you have all the basic land types. I think that's pretty decent. It's a little expensive, but these types of spells that let you get multiple lands with them, they're usually between 4 and 5 mana. So I think that's pretty good. I think I'll give it a mid rating in limited, and I think I'll do the same for constructed. The more land types you have in your deck, the more valuable this card's going to be, and the more cards you're going to be able to look at to put the best card on top of your library when casting this. So it's pretty good. I think the only drawback is the fact that it's 5 mana value instead of 4. So, but can't always be greedy, you know, got to take it as it is. So I'll give it a mid rating for both limited and constructed. Next uncommon is Strength of the Coalition for 1 green. It's an instant. Has a kicker cost of 2 and a white. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 until end of turn. If this spell was kicked, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Yeah, that's pretty good. It's a pump spell for 1 creature. If you pay the kicker cost, everybody gets a benefit as well. So it looks like if you paid the kicker cost, a creature you control would get +2/+2. Also, all your other creatures, including the creature you targeted with the +2/+2, would get a +1/+1 counter as well. So that's pretty good. It can make your team pretty big, pretty fast. I give it a mid rating for limited. It's a combat trick I would use if I was playing green white. Fits into that deck type pretty nicely. For constructed, it depends on the deck. I think for now I'm going to give it a low rating. If you're playing a +1/+1 counter deck or deck with a lot of combat tricks, this would be better. Maybe even worthy of a high rating, but outside of that, it's kind of limited, so a little narrow. So I'm just gonna give it a low rating for constructed. Could be wrong, but that's my initial impressions for it right now. Next up is Tail Swipe for 1 and a green. I'm sorry, Tail Swipe for 1 green. It's an instant. Choose target creature you control and target creature you don't control. If you cast the spell during your main phase, the creature you control gets +1/+1 until end of turn. Then those creatures fight each other. So it's a fight spell where your creature gets a +1/+1 bonus until end of turn. For 1 mana, that's pretty decent. I mean, sometimes fight spells, usually instant speed fight spells start at 2 mana value, so that's pretty good. I like it. I mean, you're not always going to win the fight battle, but most of the time you are, and this helps you edge towards winning it. So I'll give it a mid rating for limited. It's a good removal card, something I would have in my deck, and I'll go low for constructed, just due to the fact that constructed has just so many options for removal spells, fight spells, bite spells, things like that. So we'll go low for that for constructed. Moving on to the next uncommon, Tear Asunder for 1 and a green. Has a kicker cost of 1 and black. Each target exile target artifact or enchantment. If this spell was kicked, exile target non-land permanent instead. Yeah, this is a solid card. It's either a disenchant or a naturalize for you more newer players, or if you just pay 1 colorless and 1 black more, it becomes kind of like a Binding of the Old Gods first chapter. Lets you exile a non-land permanent. So that's pretty decent. Sneaky good, if you will. going to give it a high rating for limited. I think it's an efficient removal spell. And I'll give it a mid rating for constructed. Probably something I would start at least one copy in the main deck. So I'm pretty happy with that. But yeah, it's premium removal in limited though. Next up is Territorial Marrow for 1 and a green. It's a creature elemental. Power and toughness is star. It has domain. Territorial Marrow's power and toughness are each equal to twice the number of basic land types among lands you control. So if you have all 5 basic land types, this is a 10-10. Let's say you just have green. So it's a 2-2 for 5. But most of the time you're going to have between anywhere from 2 to 5 basic land types. So solid card. Could have a big body for it. I like it for limited. I'll give it a mid rating. For constructed, yeah, I think I'll go mid. The fact that it could become a 10-10 if you have the 5 basic land types and then just throw a trample ability on it, watch out, your opponents are in trouble. So, but it's somewhere in the mid to low end of the mid-level rating. But cool flavor though. Love it for Dominaria United. So we have our first saga for green in an uncommon slot. It has read ahead. For those of you who don't know what read ahead is, I'll read the rules text. Read ahead. Choose a chapter and start with that many lore counters. Add 1 after your draw step. Skip chapters don't trigger. Sacrifice after 3. So basically, yeah, if you skipped ahead to chapter 3, it would have 3 counters on it right away, and chapters 1 and 2 wouldn't trigger. You would just get the benefit of chapter 3. But let's see what it says for chapter 1. Search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, then shuffle. Chapter 2 is create a 1/1 green sapling creature token, and chapter 3 is domain. Target creature you control gets +X and gains trample until end of turn, where X is the number of basic land types among lands you control. Yeah, it's pretty solid. It's a ramp spell, it's a token generator, and it's a pump spell across 3 chapters. That's pretty decent. I like it. I'm gonna be bold with it and give it a high rating for limited. I think that's pretty solid. I'll give it a mid rating for constructed. I think it'll see constructed play in certain decks. And who knows, you don't always have to give the +X bonus to the little token. You can give it to one of your other creatures and have them trample away if you have a lot of the land types on the battlefield. So yeah, that's a pretty solid card. I like it. Pretty decent for what it does. I believe this might be our last uncommon. Yavimaya Iconoclast for 1 and a green. It's a creature elf with a 3/2 power and toughness. Wow, that's pretty good rate already. It has a kicker cost of red, and it has trample. When Yavimaya Iconoclast enters the battlefield, or if it was kicked, it gets +1/+1 and gains haste until end of turn. So if you paid the kicker cost for 3 total mana, you'd get a 4/3 trampling hasty elf. Yikes. Watch out, Bloodbraid Elf. It's pretty brutal. Yeah, this is a solid card. I definitely like it for limited. And wow. Yeah, I think this will see some constructed play as well. I'm gonna give it a mid-range rating, high-end mid-range rating for constructed. But in limited, this could be a bomb, You and your opponent are in the late game and nobody's got any creatures on the battlefield, or they've got something small. You cast this with its kicker cost and you come across for 4 trample damage. They'll be in a little bit of trouble. In constructed, just due to the fact that it's a 2-drop for 3/2 trample, even if you don't pay the kicker cost, that's still going to be a threat your opponents have to deal with. So I think it'll see constructed play. It's a pretty solid card for what it costs. So give it a mid rating, high-end mid rating for constructed. So we're moving on to the rares now. We have our green Defiler of Vigor, or Vigor. 3 and 2 green. It's a creature, Phyrexian Worm, 6/6 power and toughness with trample. That's pretty good. As an additional cost to cast green permanent spells, you may pay 2 life. those spells cost green less to cast if you paid life this way. This effect reduces only the amount of green mana you pay. And whenever you cast a green permanent spell, put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. Yeah, this is pretty bomby. If you're playing green, your opponents are in trouble just due to the fact that you're going to be making things huge. They're going to get counters on them. This is a trampling 6/6 threat for 5 mana. That's pretty good. And you have the option of paying life instead of paying mana, so you can ramp stuff out really fast. I'm going to give the first epic rating for limited on that. I'm going to do the same thing for constructed. I think it's going to see some solid play. It's just too powerful. It's a threat that needs to be dealt with right away. So I really like it. It's probably one of the better defilers I've seen, just because of what it does and its cost versus value. It's pretty solid. So we'll go epic across the board for Defiler of Vigor. Okay, next up is Herd Migration. For 6 and a green, it's a sorcery, has domain. Create a 3/3 green beast creature token for each basic land type among lands you control. Or you can just pay 1 and a green and discard Herd Migration. Search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library, and you gain 3 life. I'm going to give this a high rating. This could be anywhere from just being kind of a land filtering type card where you gain 3 life to something that's really crazy good late game. For 7 mana, you could create 15 power worth of creatures on the battlefield. That's going to be a problem your opponents are going to have to deal with. So I like it. It's you need to have the mana to play it, but usually in decks that are going to be playing this card are going to have ways to ramp into getting that mana. So I think it's pretty solid. We'll go with a high rating for it in limited. Constructed, I'll give it a high rating as well, just due to the fact in constructed it lets you search your library for basic land cards, and if you're playing 4 of these in a ramp deck, you ramp out this, casting it or cycling it away 3 times, you're gaining life. Then for the 4th copy of this, you cast it for its domain ability, and you've got 15 power of creatures on the battlefield. In some cases, that might be a game ender, so pretty solid. And this could be even better in Commander. So I think it's an interesting card. It could be a bomb style card in constructed as well. So next rare is Leaf Crowned Visionary for 2 green. Creature, elf, druid. It's a 1/1 power and toughness. Other elves you control get +1/+1. Whenever you cast an elf spell, you may pay 1 green. If you do, draw a card. Seems like there's quite a few elves in this format, or in Dominaria United. So I think it's going to get the most value in constructed, but still pretty decent. I'll give it a mid rating, not because of it's a fault of its own, but because of not sure how many elves you're going to be able to get to build around this card in limited. If you get a bunch of elves, this is probably a high level card, just due to the fact you can pay that extra green to draw a card, and they get the +1/+1 bonus. I like it as a high rating though in constructed, because you can build an elf tribal deck with this in it, and you're playing multiple copies of this. You're able to pump up all your elves pretty quick there. So solid constructed card, mid-level and limited, but if you're able to do a build around with it, I think it could be a high level card. So but for now, we'll go mid, limited, high constructed. Next up is Llanowar Green Widow for 2 and a green. It's a creature spider, 4/3 power and toughness. It has reach and trample. It has domain for 7 and green. Return Llanowar Green Widow from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. It gains, if this permanent would leave the battlefield, exile it instead of putting it anywhere else. This ability costs 1 less to activate for each basic land type among lands you control. So it's basically, if you're playing a domain deck, this essentially has flashback. Pretty decent. I think it's could be pretty useful in a limited deck if you build around it nicely, or if you're playing more than, say, 2 basic land types, you're playing a 3-color deck, 3 or 4-color deck, you could probably get some pretty good value out of it. I like it as a high rating in limited, just due to the fact that it's a 4/3, it has reach, and it has trample, and you can bring it back from your graveyard once. For constructed, I'm going to give it a mid rating, but I think this is a card that you would probably see brought in from the main deck. Brought in from the sideboard to the main deck to deal with your opponent's flyers, or even against a control deck where, yeah, let's say they board wipe and they've got flyers or something like that. You can just recast it from your graveyard, giving it another shot at life. So, yeah, I think that's right where I want to place it for constructed. Next up is Llanowar Loam Speaker for 1 and a green. It's a creature, elf druid. It's a 1/3 power and toughness. Tap to add 1 mana of any color, or tap to have target land you control becomes a 3/3 elemental creature with haste until end of turn. It's still a land, activate only as a sorcery. For limited, I'd give it a mid rating. It's good color fixing. It can make a land into a 3/3 elemental, but you have to use it as a sorcery, so that's somewhat limited. I think its first ability might be a little better. I don't know. It's hard to say. For constructed, I'm going to give it a high rating, just because it seems like multicolor is going to be running rampant throughout standard, and that's always how it is in some of the eternal formats, and especially in Commander. So being able to tap it for any color, that makes it a pretty versatile card, and it has the extra ability of turning a land into an elemental. So it has its uses. I think it'll see more play in constructed though, and give you more value in that format. But still solid and limited though. Next up is Quarian Beastcaller for 1 and a green. It's a creature, Dryad Warrior, 2/2 power and toughness. Whenever you cast a creature spell, put a +1/+1 counter on Quarian Beastcaller. When Quarian Beastcaller dies, distribute X +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures you control, where X is the number of +1/+1 counters on Quarian Beastcaller. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, you playing a limited or constructed deck with a ton of creatures in it, this is going to get max value. Yeah, that's a solid card. And then when it dies, it does have to have the death trigger. When it dies, you can distribute X +1/+1 counters among any number of target creatures you control. That's pretty solid. Wow. I want to give it an epic rating, but I think it falls just short of being an epic card. So I'll give it a high rating for limited, and the same thing for constructed. It's right there. This is a card your opponents need to deal with right away. Otherwise, it's just going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. And if it dies, you just distribute that bigness onto your other creatures, and they get bigger. So, yeah, this is a solid card. Lots of creatures everywhere. Who knows? Maybe if I'm able to get this card, I'll draft a deck with 23 creatures in it. So we'll see how that goes. But pretty cool card. Watch out for this one. Next up is Threats Undetected for 2 and a green. It's a sorcery. Search your library for up to 4 creature cards with different powers and reveal them. An opponent chooses 2 of those cards, shuffle the chosen cards into your library, and put the rest into your hand. So for 3 mana, you get to get 2 creature cards out of your library into your hand, essentially, and then 2 get shuffled back in. Not bad. I think this card is really going to shine in, probably more so in constructed. I'll give it a mid rating for limited. For constructed, I'll give it a high rating, especially in Commander. You can get some crazy stuff in there. So it's kind of like pick your poison in Commander. For standard, could be the same way. You get some low-powered creatures that have some really powerful abilities, or you get some high-powered creatures that are just really efficient. So your opponent is in a no-win situation, makes it difficult for him. So you'll be in a win-win situation in that respect. So, interesting card. I could be wrong about this in constructed, but it seems like it has a some really good potential, especially in Commander. So we'll see how it plays out. Looks like a fun card, though. Next up is Urborg Lurgoyf for 1 and a green. It's a creature, Lurgoyf. Power and toughness is star, 1+ star. Has some really awesome artwork. I think this is one of the best artworks in the set, so pretty cool. It has it's a creature, Lurgoyf. It has a kicker cost of blue and or black, and it says, as Urborg Lurgoyf enters the battlefield, mill 3 cards for each time it was kicked. Urborg Lurgoyf's power is equal to the number of creature cards in your graveyard, and its toughness is equal to that number +1. So if you kick it, it mills a card, and you'll probably hit some creatures to make it bigger. If you don't kick it, it's just going to be totally dependent on what you have in your graveyard. So early game, this could be tough to use. It's not like the old it's not like Tarmogoyf where it's any kind of card type makes it bigger. I'm gonna give it a mid rating for limited and constructed. I could be wrong, but I'd probably have maybe 1 or 2 of these in a constructed deck. It'd be better to play late in the game, like anything after turn 4. But this is, I don't know, it'll get better as the game goes on. For limited, same deal. You're going to get more value out of it if you play it later in the game. So unfortunately, it's not going to be the best 2-drop. So something to consider when you're playing it. But not that I wouldn't draft it. I would definitely draft it, and I'd definitely use it. It's just knowing when to play it to get the max value out of it. So go mid across the board for both limited and constructed for it. Okay, so we're moving on to the Mythics. Silverback Elder, 2 and 3 green. So a total mana value of 5. It's a creature, Ape Shaman. It's a 5/7 power and toughness. Whenever you cast a creature spell, choose 1. Destroy target artifact or enchantment. Look at the top 5 cards of your library. You may put a land card from among them onto the battlefield tapped. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order, or you gain 4 life. Yeah, this is pretty solid. Lets you destroy an artifact or enchantment, or it lets you ramp out a land. It doesn't have to be a basic land. It could just be a land. It does come into play tapped though, but still lets you ramp, or it lets you gain 4 life. And it's got a big butt, some good toughness, solid power rating. Yeah, this is a decent card. It could be. Oh yeah, it's pretty decent. I want to give it a high-end high rating. I really like it at that spot, both for limited and constructed. Your opponents are going to have to worry about this as a decent threat, and the fact that you're able to, most of the time you'll probably be either ramping out land or gaining life, makes it really difficult for your opponents to try to beat you. So, and it is every time you cast a creature spell. So that could get pretty crazy. Yeah, we'll go high and for that for it. I want to do epic, but it's we'll have to see how it plays. I could be wrong, but it's a decent card. It's a must draft. It's a must play, solid card. Next up is the World Spell. The Saga for 5 and 2 green. Has read ahead. And chapter 1 and 2 are the same. It says, look at the top 7 cards of your library. You may reveal a non-saga permanent card from among them and put it into your hand. Put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So a non-saga permanent card goes into your hand. Chapter 3 says, put up to 2 non-saga permanent cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Interesting. Yeah, so this could be pretty crazy for some. If you want to play giant stuff, get some big, gigantic, smashing creatures or planeswalkers or something like that. you can be able to get those into your hand after looking at the top 7 cards, and then chapter 3 you're able to throw them out there. Or you can read ahead. If you've already got good stuff in your hand, you just slam this onto the battlefield, hit chapter 3, and then put 2 permanents into play right away. So pretty cool. This could be crazy nuts in Commander. It's probably a card I could see in a standard deck or something like that, where you're ramping into something like that, because it does have a 7 mana cost. I give it a high rating for limited, and for constructed, I'm going to say high as well. I like high rating on that. I think that it's has the potential to go crazy and stuff, but yeah, I think high is good for that. You know what? Actually, I think I've convinced myself after thinking again. I think in constructed, just seeing the way things play out in Commander, you can do some crazy stuff with this. So I'll give it an epic rating for constructed, just to the fact that man, you can get some huge stuff out there, stuff that changes the way the game goes. So we'll go epic constructed. We'll go high for limited, and that looks like that concludes the green cards. Next up, we're going to be diving into the multicolor cards, and that'll be fun because I believe all the multicolored cards are legendary, so that'll be fun to review. So we'll see how that goes. But that'll be next episode. So tune in next time. We'll be doing the multicolor cards, and we're getting close to the end of the set, so it's been pretty exciting so far. Thanks for watching, and we will see you shortly for the multicolored cards from Dominaria United.